Welcome to the Boardroom. I'm Ros Gold-Onwude, and today we are here with Jason Wright, newly appointed president of the Washington football team. He's the first Black president of an NFL team, currently the youngest at age 38, and just the fourth former NFL player to hold this position as well. What's up, Jason? Congratulations.
Thanks. How are you doing? I'm good.
I'm well. I can only imagine all that you have on your plate now that you've had a few days under your belt or some time to experience the role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind, to be sure. I think I'm struck by a few things. The challenges are real. The people are great that I have to work with around me to build and set a new direction. And those two things together, make me think, give me a ton of optimism. Give me a ton of optimism. It's going to be some hard work.
Well, I know you're not one to shy away from hard work, and I'm glad that the feeling right now is optimism because you're right. There's a lot on your plate, and one of the first things, is this whole rebranding of the franchise. I know a name is still in the works, but you said in a number of interviews that it's not just a name and logo. It's about settling and finding your identity. So what are the pillars and foundations of the identity you would like this franchise to have as an organization and as a football squad?
That's good. That's actually really good. So, I'll start with the values that, Dan and Tanya, Coach Revere and myself are really rooted in. And in Coach Revere's process of coming into the head coaching role, Dan and Tanya, these are the things they talked about and some things that I talked about with Dan and Tanya Snyder, the owners of the team, as I was going through my interview process. And those are values like inclusion, transparency, accountability. And the way that those pillars manifest are different on the football and business side. On the football side, accountability is like last Saturday after the guys had a bad practice. Coach chewing them out, calling folks out by name, asking people to step up and lead. On my side, it's having real transparent people processes, understanding of how we're performing at an individual and group and business unit level, and putting that out there in a way that helps us improve, that makes it transparent and obvious. So same principle, but different tact. And so I think the first thing is that it's rooted, in a set of values, and that's how you start to change direction. I think beyond that, you start to think about talent. Just like on the football field, one of the things I need to think about is having the best talent in the right places and then equipped to do their job well. You have a great football player, but in the wrong scheme, and you don't have a good thing on the field. I think what I'm thinking a lot about right now is we have really good talent in different parts of the organization, but are they fully equipped? Are they in the role that's the exact right fit for their expertise? And how do we unleash them? And what's my role, to better enable them? So, those are some of the things I'm thinking about just right out of the gate that help us start to move in a positive direction.
Right, and as you try to lead an entire franchise and all of the employees and players and staff that's a part of that to find their identity, I'd like to start with the individual, a little bit about your identity. You grew up in a family of activists. Dad was a civil rights activist. On Twitter, you actually tweeted out your grandfather co-founded multiple NAACP chapters in the 1940s. How did this upbringing affect how you view your own personal identity and how you navigate today's world?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say it made me, I think my family has for a long time considered themselves part of a family that's much broader than blood and extends outside the walls of their household. People today call it being a global citizen, but it's the idea that, your welfare is tied to the welfare of those around you, and most importantly, the least of these and the most marginalized. And so whether it was what my grandfather was doing, what my dad did, what my cousin on my mom's side did. My cousin was a Black Panther too, one of the few women that was like part of the movement at the time.
Right.
And going all the way back on my mom's side, way back, is either a great uncle, I'm not exactly sure the relation, but it was a landmark civil rights case called Million versus Lightfoot that was about racial gerrymandering. and made that illegal. A ruling that still affects us today. So on all sides of the family, they've always thought that there's something about their work and their lives that are about helping, the least and the most marginalized, because our fates are tied together. I don't do well unless y'all do well. And I think that's a little bit of what, my wife and I have embraced over the course of our lives too. And, for me, I think that manifests through a couple things. Vocationally, I've had the chance to be in really influential places. And so for me, it's always about using that sphere of influence to get resources, attention, time, care, whatever it is, on the causes I care about or the things that I think are important. And then my spouse, my wife, she's the hands-on person. Individual lives, individual family lives, investing in individual businesses and organizations. And I think together that's our way of continuing that legacy.
Considering your background and all the people around you have helped mold this vision and this sense of identity, and then not to mention, we're sitting here celebrating the fact that you're the first Black president in the NFL. This comes around the same time that, we do this interview on the heels of Jacob Blake and, another shooting from police brutality, if you will, 7 shots in the back while he was turned around in Wisconsin, all of this happening at the same time. How does this affect you personally?
Well, I think, the national dialogue on race is something I haven't seen in my lifetime. And I think that's important. And I think it's important insofar as it's been an evolution from where it started. And the NFL has been at the center of it. I've been saying this week, like the NFL was thrust upon as the steward of this conversation around race, given, what CAP did to raise awareness at the beginning of this. But it was never going to be a great steward of this. Because if you understand racial history, it is complex and entrenched, and even the most brilliant academics and clergy can't manage it. For damn sure we weren't going to be able to manage it in football. But if I look at the evolution of the conversation, the role that players have played, the way that people's mindsets have evolved, what Commissioner Goodell said this week about how his thinking has evolved, I think we're in a better place in the national dialogue, but with so much more progress in the trenches, in the streets, in our individual homes to be made. That said, with what happened this week, like, I'm like everybody else, I'm just still processing. And the thing that is in my mind is less related to, the race dynamics that I'm familiar with or what's going on in particular in this case, but with the kids who are sitting in the backseat. His babies were in the car, and so, that's actually what I'm thinking about. I'm in consistent prayer for, their psychological and spiritual well-being of those babies, and also for the healing of Jacob Blake, because I think the man's still alive fighting for his life, right? So and that's better for everything. So that's where my mind is.
Right. I mean, the brutality of how it happened, the children being there, the way this man is going to have to live a completely different life, paralyzed, it's very painful. And clearly, even after all the protests, it's so clear that we're so far as a country from seeing racism, racial unrest, police brutality, these conversations and questions coming to an even more healthy place, and one day hopefully erased. But so as we sit here and we're willing to admit that and be disappointed with that and hurt by it, what will be your stance for players or any member of the franchise participating in protest or speaking up on Black Lives Matter, police brutality, and racial unrest in America?
Yeah, well, I mean, firstly, the responsibility for that falls to Coach Rivera on the football side, right? I'm the business guy. But I'll say this, where Coach Rivera has landed on that, I'm fully supportive of. And his story is actually the one that I think we all need as citizens of this country on this topic. Coach Rivera effectively said, I spent the last couple years learning from my players and my coaches on this topic, things that I didn't know before. And I learned a whole lot. And as I learned, I went back to the Constitution. This man read the doggone Constitution. And when he read it, He said, I see space in that Constitution for people to express themselves how they want, using whatever influence they have to help us fulfill the promise of a more perfect union. And I'm going to create space for that on our team, for our players to do that however they want. It might differ from what I think is the right way to do it, but I'm going to give them space to do it. And then I'm going to do my part in the mode that fits me and fits with my ideology, but I'm going to give other people space to do or not do what they want. And I am 100% behind that. And then the personal lens I bring to it is, as a former player, and we weren't talking about racial equity like this. It's always been something I've worked on and thought about, but we weren't talking about racial equity like this when I was playing, right? We weren't talking about, criminal justice and the differential outcomes based on race. But I know that for me, it wasn't just the paycheck I was running out on the field for. I was putting in those blood, sweat, tears, hard work for the platform it gave me, for the things that I was pushing in society. Education, for me at the time, it was education reform. It was faith and spirituality. It was anti-human trafficking advocacy. Those were the big things for me at the time. Urban development, development of inner city communities, economic development. Those were the things that I was talking about. And being a football player allowed me to do that in a way that I couldn't otherwise. And so I know that that is part of the value of the role. And so I fully affirm that, and I'm grateful that Coach is fully aligned with that as well.
It's not just racial unrest you're dealing with. You're coming into so many things on your plate as the new president of the Washington football team. One of those, everybody in the world and in sports is trying to navigate is, living with COVID-19. Now, you've already done a number of interviews talking about transparency, being data-driven. Specifically, I'm curious, what will you be focusing on during the time when teams begin to travel to keep them safe? And, what are the best practices you're working on?
Yeah, I think, I just had a meeting on this, so it's fresh in mind. I think there's things we can do at home and then things on the road. But on the road, and our football operations team is handling most of this. We have employees on our side, on the business side, that we're responsible for, and we're putting in the right rigorous controls and processes around. But with travel, it's effectively treat every spot like it's a hot spot, have the highest protocols, and then ensure that we are communicating the risks to everybody involved with the club in a super clear way, and that everybody is drilled in the best behaviors. Because at the end of the day, it's about individual behaviors that are going to keep COVID-19 at bay this season. And that's every guy on the team, that's every person on the staff doing as an individual what they need to do. One weak link in the chain starts to break this thing down, right? And so if we treat every spot like it's a hot spot, like COVID is everywhere, that it's rampant in that community, then we are, confined to our hotel. We have paths that we walk in the rooms. We're always wearing our PPE. We're distancing, and we're not thinking it's just, an annoying thing we have to do. We're actually distancing, and we're treating that right. And there are ways that we can measure that and hold folks accountable on that. And that's the stuff that on the football side, they're already doing. And I think they're doing a great job with it. I will apply those principles as well on the business side now that we're standing up our operation there. So that's the travel piece. But I think, at home for us, it's recognizing, and I think maybe it's taking a step back. I guess it's home or on the road. There's a mindset that I think is important here that I actually already espoused a little bit in thinking about my background. But it's a little bit of like, I am my brother or sister's keeper. Like, I am part of a collective. I'm part of a team. This is bigger than me. And that my individual actions have reverberations that affect many people that are immediately around me. And then that effect reverberates to their families and beyond. And so I think what we need is, there's a bit of a reset of rampant individualism, where my own aims are all that matters. I think for us to do well in COVID as a culture, we have to think of ourselves more as a collective and as a team. And I think as a football program, we are set more up to do that, hopefully.
You mentioned there are ways to measure your success at this. How do you measure it?
Yeah, I'll show you.
Okay.
Got this little thing here. It might flash a couple times if you see it. It's a tracing mechanism. This will flash bright red over and over again if I am within an inappropriate distance of somebody else.
Wow.
And we have a database that logs who's doing that more than others. And how often have you been tagged as being too close to somebody over time? And if you stay close to somebody for too long, it's going to keep dinging you in the system. And so we know who's actually behaving best, who's behaving worst. It allows us to have an individualized approach. It helps us to understand which jobs just bring you in contact with people more often. And this is data the football side is using in a really good way to manage individual behavior and help people be safe. I'm going to do the same thing on the business side. So, there's the technology is really, really helping us here. And then there's a wealth of data that comes through the NFL League office, through the committee that oversees all this, getting the right expertise from epidemiologists, all the right dashboards from national organizations. And so I think we feel well equipped with information.
Wow, certainly data driven.
Mm-hmm.
Having been a former athlete myself, basketball, it's fascinating. I would love to hope that all of those members of the football team and staff could buy into the larger ethos rather than maybe need to be policed by technology in order to buy in. Right?
I'm cynical about human behavior. So I'm like, look, give me my little ankle bracelet, whatever you want to call this. Like, put it on me because I need the accountability or else I might just be a little bit wild. I'm cynical about our behavior and our decision-making in any given moment. We can always be overtaken by whatever the moment is.
Right.
So you know what, I wish it beeped at me. That would be even better. That would be even better. But I know I'm here for it. I think we need all sorts of reinforcing mechanisms. And this is a little bit of my theory of culture change, frankly, and what we want to bring to the organization more broadly. There's role modeling. So you need people who are visible leaders who are doing it right. You need the ability to teach people the skills. So you need to actually equip people like, hey, actually, here's the information. Like if you're too close, your probability goes up. Here that you need to equip people in a learning sort of way. You need reinforcing mechanisms, and that's what this is. Things that hold you accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And you need a narrative and a story that says why this is important. People need to feel the why, not just like you got to do this. They need to understand the why and why it's personal for them, and it needs to pull on their values and their sense of self. And if you can do those four things, if you can do components of those four things, you get real change. And this is just this is one of those components. It's a reinforcing mechanism.
I appreciate the honesty.
Yeah.
And
being real.
Absolutely.
People are people.
Absolutely. And I think also your experience as a former player, you also understand all the dynamics that are there. Now, continuing on, you're basically, leading the way on the financial vision for the franchise. I know that, look, fans are part of revenue. Yeah. How aggressively will you be seeking and looking into and pursuing at some point in the season, possibly seeing fans at games?
I think right now our position is no. Like, we do not plan to have fans in the stadium, not because we don't care about our fans, but because we do. All the data that we have to date, given we're in a large metropolitan area, the history of COVID spread in the area and what we've seen from other cities of similar density, both domestically and abroad, we just don't think it's a good decision at this time to have fans in the stadium. Could we always revisit? Yeah, for sure. But that's not really in the picture at this stage. And other teams are doing it. And as other teams may have success, then, yeah, and if they're in a similar market and we can learn from that. We can always learn from that. It's never a strict no, but it is certainly a very, very, very strong no for now. But what we're going to do in the meantime is think about all the other ways that we can engage with our fans. The digital channels that we can creatively engage with them on, the way we can bring them into establishing our new name and identity. The ways in which we can experiment in the stadium with our staff around the fan experience so that when they come back in 2021, that it is measurably different, that it is more engaging, that it uses embeds new technology in the experience. Hey, maybe the food is better. I don't know. But there's a lot of stuff that we can do now to improve for the next time folks are there. And almost, stating clearly as I can that we won't have folks there gives us the space to do that and be a bit creative.
Another part of your experience, you were part of a consulting firm, partner at McKinsey & Company, known for consulting, known for going in, looking at companies and helping to change their culture for the better, change their, turn around their profits and the way they're doing business. Mm-hmm. So if you were brought on to evaluate the Washington football team, What would be your analysis and advice to them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing it right now. I'm doing it right now, and I think there are things that we need that are known that we need to do right away. And one is continue to collect as much information as we can collect about our culture and where we are today. And not just in a qualitative, like, here's a story about this sort of way, but in a quantitative way. Like, there's a way to measure culture. I know how to do that from my time at McKinsey. We're going to measure culture here in a rigorous way. And that's going to set our baseline for how we say we're improving over time. We're going to get measures of how inspirational, effective, and building our leaders are. We're going to get a feel for how strong we are in bottoms up and top down innovation. We're going to get a feel for how collaborative we are in a fact-based way. And then that's going to help us understand the things that we need to do to get to a better culture that unlocks the great potential that we have in our organization and our talent. So we're going to diagnose that. We're also going to diagnose our operational performance. And we have measures that we track already, but we're going to look at things around the stadium and the grounds and travel and all of that stuff. And just how are we performing on an operational basis? Are we executing with excellence? What is, the experience of people that experience our operations? And then, of course, we're going to get a detailed view of how we're doing financially. And this is one that every NFL team does pretty well already. But I'm actually eager to see, what is the full value improvement opportunity across all the areas of the enterprise financially, whether that's the revenue side or the cost side. And I now, over the last few days, am getting steeped in, what are the biggest drivers of our financial performance and what are smaller drivers? And some things have been different than I expected, frankly, of what I would have guessed outside in. And so that helps me understand which parts of the organization to hone in on and where we need to really think about innovation and modernization of our tools and processes. But I'm just getting a comprehensive view. And so maybe I'll take this back out of consultant speak and make it plain. The way I'm going about it is listen, learn, and manage the crap out of the urgent. Listening is talking to everybody in the organization. Learning is doing all this diagnostic. I'm getting all this information that I was telling you about. And manage the urgent is be on top of COVID, be on top of our culture. And that's it. And that's it for now.
You've been tasked with the culture side of this. You continue to bring it up. And obviously the Washington football team has been in the headlines for a while around culture, if you will. Sexual allegations have arose for this franchise. The first main ones we heard about were in July. And now recently, again, at the end of August, we're hearing about new ones. And some of the new ones have been pointed directly at the owner, Dan Snyder. So at least at this moment, 40 current or former female employees have stepped up to discuss sexual allegation claims against the franchise. And, often where there's smoke, there's fire. Jason, 40 women. What are you going to do about this?
Yeah, well, there's a few things that were in place that gave me confidence stepping into this role. An independent investigation is one of those. And the key here is, Dan and Tanya put out an important statement around things that are factually incorrect according to them, right? And I think that's important, and people need to do that as individuals. Me as the chief executive, I am fully on board with that, stating what's fact and what's not, but also welcoming all the information. Because the more we hear, the better we're going to be able to sort things. So I welcome more information. It's going to be a ton that I'm going to get from the independent investigation. I'm going to get a ton from my own listening to. I'm going to get a ton from the culture diagnostic that we do. And some things will be true. Some things will be one instance and not pervasive, and other things will be pervasive issues that we need to fix across the culture. I just need as much information as possible, and so I welcome it. I'm not resistant to it. And then as we sort through what is real and what is not, it really is about swift action. I think what our workforce needs, and I think what, frankly, the public needs to believe this is different, is to move swiftly as we can. And you have to be measured. We have to think through. We have to sort facts, all that stuff, You can't be knee-jerk and not give people the right, due process and things like that. But as fast as things can possibly move, they need to move.
Right.
And so one of the things that was obvious to me outside in is that we didn't have an HR enterprise. So we're building that. I'm not waiting for that. We're building an HR enterprise in a way that will be robust enough to not only manage what we would want for an organization normally, but also to manage the particular challenge we're in. Because even if you say these things happen, if whatever has happened a long time ago, or if I find out about issues that we're not currently aware of through the independent investigation, even if those things are in the past, people carry the baggage of that with them, folks that are still in the workforce. And so we have to move swiftly in support of those folks to create an environment where people can openly discuss those things, where the ideas from people who have experienced different things across the organization can inform our new strategy. So so that's a little bit of how I am thinking about it. But we're in the throes of it today. And it's on me as a leader to do whatever I can to reassure our workforce we're moving in a new direction, knowing that I can never give them the full confidence until we're on the other side of this.
All the allegations and sexual allegations and claims against the Washington football team, all of this stuff happened before you were even there. I mean, you were just brought on to the franchise and the team now to lead them out of this. So under your watch, how will female employees, women working in or women working with the Washington football team know that they can work and be safe, and that if an issue arises, that there will be accountability?
Yeah, well, I think there's one thing that is like really fundamental and will bore the crap out of everybody, but it's having clear processes, policies, and procedures. Like if it is super clear, if you've experienced something where you are harassed or even a microaggression, right? There is a clear person or outlet for you to take that to, anonymously if needed, that then moves through a clear process by which it's vetted, people are reached out to and notified. If it's above a certain threshold, it's escalated and we bring in the right expertise. Like I know how to design these processes, right? It's a matter of putting those in place, and it's mundane as the day is long, but it is really important for people to feel like there is an infrastructure on which they can rely. And that is not yet there. That is not yet there. So that's number one. We're going to put that into place. I think the second thing is actually something that's less related to extremely, like traumatic experiences or extremely negative work experiences that a woman could experience in a corporation or an organization of any kind, but more germane to the day-to-day. And it is getting an eye on how women are included in the key decisions that we make as an organization in the strategic direction. When we are talking about the new identity, when we are talking about, what we're doing to think about the renewed fan experience, when we're thinking about the new stadium build and the components of that, the major strategic priorities on the business side of things, who's in the room making those calls? And are women empowered to have real influence on those decisions, frankly, make some of them on their own, right? And that is on us from a talent management standpoint to ensure we have a diverse set of talent across all these decisions. And is it the right thing to do? Yes, but I also want to do it because it's the prudent business thing to do. Because all the research says when you have diverse teams, you make better decisions, better businesses, and you have better business outcomes over time. And specifically with women, there's a great academic report that says if you have more than two women on a team, or two or more women on a team, the collective intelligence of that team is higher than a team that only has one woman or no women. It's empirical. It is facts. And so, that I like facts. So that is something that I want to apply across our organization because it's going to get us better answers and we're going to be a better business because of it.
Man, Jason, I just appreciate your willingness to answer questions head on. I do interviews with executives all the time, and a lot of times people kind of wiggle around things. I appreciate your transparency, your thought. I can absolutely see how your experience, not only as a player, but as a former business consultant, is going to help here. And we just thank you for your time at the Boardroom, and I just wish you the best of luck and success and support as you begin on a big task at hand as the new president of the Washington football team.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure to be on. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you.